Alright, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Chupacabra's lair. I'm your indie host, Larry, the most delectable Chupacabra man, and we're back for another delicious first look video, taking a look at Monolith, which is coming out today on June 7th. It's made by a group called Team D13, which is a trio of developers who are all really big fans of roguelikes and shoot-em-ups and bullet hells. And that is more or less what they've created. Monolith, if I had to describe it, is basically if The Binding of Isaac and Bullet Hell Shooter and Metroid Prime had a baby and then put it into a crazy post-apocalyptic future. And that's basically what you get. It's a nice take on the roguelike genre that isn't a medieval dungeon. It's actually more of like a robotic dungeon where you have to shoot your way through endless ancient hallways to unlock, like, sinister ancient secrets, which is definitely something that I'm a big fan of. So basically the story for this game is that we're somewhere in the far-flung future. There's been some type of like war or post-apocalypse, and now one of the ancient facilities, probably the Monolith, has been powered back up, and it's opened up and is starting to let people wander around inside of it again. And we're gonna roam around inside of its ancient, illustrious halls and try to find power. And that's basically it. It's your standard roguelite mechanic where you go through and you die a bunch trying to get to the end, playing with different upgrades and stuff. But where it's different, and what I kind of like, is you end up back at this little hub world with this cute little cat creature that reminds me a lot of like a sci-fi version of the Cheshire Cat. Minus the legs, like sans legs or arms or tail, it's just a cat head. And he is like the only friend I've encountered so far playing this game. He's just this cheerful little head. He gives you tips sometime later, and you can actually, I guess, get information on upgrades from him as well. But the primary bread and butter of the game is you go through the game level by level, getting upgrades, clearing rooms, very much like, say, Binding of Isaac. And then you get these different upgrades, fight a boss, and you gotta go deeper and darker and face numerous more deadly enemies, and all of that. And of course, the control scheme is pretty straightforward. You have little shooter pellets that you can fire. You've got like a little dash mechanic. Very standard stuff. And there's also a bomb mechanic. If you tap shift, that'll blast all of the projectiles off the screen in case you need like an oh my god button, I'm about to die. And then of course you have 10 hit points, so it's not like your classic bullet hells where you can only die like, or get hit once and die. This one gives you 10 health. You can get more than that. You can exchange health for other upgrades. It's a very robust system, and I like that the team behind D13 really pulled from a lot of genres here and really pulled the good stuff. They didn't just grab stuff because that's what everybody did. The other thing I've really enjoyed about Monolith is there's a great plethora of different enemies and entities that you can end off squaring up against. There's like a lot of machine enemies in this game. I mean, you're basically in an old machine factory that did like crazy post-apocalypse research or pre-apocalypse research. So you'd imagine there's a bunch of leftover experiments roaming around in here. But there's also like an element of mysticism where you can fight like weird magical apostles that can summon like blasts of energy from their robes, which I'm guessing is probably less like actual deadly magic and probably just they're flashing their dong at you, which really freaks you out. And there's definitely a separation of all the different levels. Like each level kind of has like a theme or an environment going on that changes with the enemies. So here we go, here's our first upgrade. You can periodically find weapons throughout the game, which have a limited span of ammo that you can get that all do something kind of fancy. So the one that I like here is the fireball that has an AoE. And this one, just, you shoot it some direction and it blasts out and it does a damage over time effect to them. So that in the event that you just don't feel like you need to worry about aiming in the game, I always like in a bullet hell shooter type environment when you're able to just start blasting without really paying attention, and you can just assume that stuff will die. And this is a good cross-section between bullet hell shooter and roguelike. Like, I've so far enjoyed this. There's lots of different enemies that shoot lots of different pellets at you to keep you busy and concentrating, which is part of why I'm not recording this video in the normal live format that I typically do. And you gotta really pay attention because there's a lot of stuff moving around on the screen, especially on the bosses. So here's one of the upgrade terminals, and this is a terminal that upgrades your physical ship. And this is a permanent upgrade, unlike your weapons, where you can passively buff something about your ship. You can get more health back, you can get more health in general, you can get better drop rates on items, and those I like because they stack, and the stacking upgrades are the ones you really want to look for in a game. And that's another thing that this is also very in tune with a lot of roguelike mechanics, is that, like a lot of those games, it's a really good idea to clear out the entirety of every level before you go on to the deeper, darker depths of later levels that might murder your face, because you never know, you might miss out on a really slick upgrade or fighting some crazy boss like this. So this is an interesting boss, and you see quite a few of them that look kind of like this, a pulsating orb with magic runes that look like those runes from Pokemon that were actually Pokemon themselves. And that's a good example of how this game kind of does a cross-hatching between the mythical and the scientific. Almost like at some point in this facility's past, like they went from just experimenting on pure scientific stuff, and they started to experiment on like people, hence the flying skulls, or they started to manipulate body parts, like in that movie Virus, where an alien virus came to like a Russian research ship and started using human body parts to like make a new body. Something like that. And there's something about the story in a game like this that really just lets you provide your own stories to it and your own background, as it kind of gives you tidbits and hints at what are going on in the background. Like, where did all these bizarre creatures come from? And are they all from this facility? Or is this weird ghost creature here, is he really just a leftover of a previous interloper that tried to go deeper and deeper into this maze and gain ancient celestial power? I don't know. But there's that emergent gameplay thing going on. So here we are, going to the lower depths. And this is a different environment. There's going to be different enemies, and they're going to have different powers. So there's some new, like, little armored skull guys, and the idea behind those little... They kind of look like Deathstroke from the superhero movies, but they pop open, some of them, and then they shoot you, and then they go closed again with their armor. And it's usually easier to kill them if you wait till their armor pops open. Otherwise, they're just bouncing around the room being a physical obstacle for you to bash your face into, which I find kind of rude. And here we have what looks like a cowboy, or some type of... Who else has a feather in their hat? Like a minstrel from the Renaissance, who just occasionally opens up his blouse and shows you his skeletons. So I guess he's got a problem with skeleton nipples. That would be my interpretation. Oh yeah, I hate the little swarm guys. There's these little pest swarm dudes that'll just chase up on you that you gotta kill one at a time, and they are just obnoxious if you don't have an AoE effect to you. They just drive me absolutely bonkers. Oh look, so what do we want? We got a couple of upgrades here. I always like getting different weapons in this game. So I usually pick something that allows me to pick between several different options. And there's a lot of different weapons in this game, although I think there's only somewhere in the magnitude of like 6 to 12 of them. Don't quote me on that, because I've seen a lot of duplicate weapons already this early in the game. And I think part of that is because as you die in this game, and this is an amazing weapon, like it wraps around the environment, so what you shoot comes back and can hit things a second time for a reduced bit of damage. But what this game does is, much like later versions of Binding of Isaac, this game you don't actually get access to all the weapons and abilities and items until you've died a couple of times, and they slowly unlock depending on how well you do in each one of your runs. And I would assume later on you might be able to exchange and try out different types of spaceships and different types of starter weapons as you unlock new cool stuff. If not, I think that would be a good feature to add to a later portion of the game. So I think they actually do have quite a big variety. I just haven't had a chance to see it yet because I've only unlocked so much stuff in my early couple, like 3, 4, 5 playthroughs. And I also like that these guys are not afraid of throwing a mini boss at your face, like right off the bat. Because I hate, like, you don't get really prepared for boss mechanics until you're sitting there looking a boss square in the face and having to deal with it. It's nice to have, like, a mini boss in these to really have something to face off against. And you know what this game really makes me think of is I remember watching back when Blockbuster was still a thing. This reminds me a lot of there was this movie where this random super soldier that they picked up in the middle of the wasteland came with them to try and stop this countdown from this subterranean facility from unleashing this Minotaur-looking death machine that was going to wipe out every piece of life on the Earth and restart it from scratch. And in that movie, they had a lot of old machines that had, like, not really made of human body parts, but they had pieces of human bodies physically inside of them. So, like, you'd break into the head of them and they had, like, body parts there. And this definitely reminds me of that a lot. Oh, and here we got this guy that produces, like, a little shield from projectiles, so you can't sit from max distance to avoid getting hit. That little swirling ball of red prevents me from firing in at these guys, so I gotta get mano-y-mano. I gotta get right up close and personal. And speaking of close and personal, one of the weapons in this game that I was really hoping to see earlier on, oh, and there's a locked door for you, was actually like a machete, almost, where you could run up to people and just slash them in the face with a spaceship. Like, that's everything I've always wanted in a game that doesn't take itself too seriously, is a spaceship with a machete. It could have been an old aircraft wing, but no. We're gonna go with a spaceship with a machete. Just swapping people in the face. It's just like, what are you? I'm a soul-siphoning exodemon that has been brought to life by ancient screwed-up scientists that were also cult members. And I'm just like, that's cool. I'm just a jackass with a machete, and I'm gonna cut your face off. Oh, well, that's kind of awkward. Well, you know, whatever works for you, I suppose, you know? Whatever floats your boat, gets your goat, and jerks off your swan. That's what you need to do. So I thought this was a really good package, and I found that the bullet hell mechanics were some of the better, like, learnable mechanics in a game of this variety that shoots a bunch of pellets at you. It was very straightforward to kind of learn as you go, think on your feet, and not be instantly punished by just the game deciding that you don't play these types of games enough. Screw you, you're just gonna die within the first couple of rooms. So here's Satan. It's been a while since I've hung out with Satan. Him and the demons, they like to torment me occasionally, the stupid sexy demons. See, Satan's really working on his beach bod in this particular situation, where he's been working out those ribs, trying really to lose that winter weight of all those, oh, there you go. I showed you a bomb there, where you can see that I can just blast away all of the projectiles to keep them from exploding my delicious face. And this is actually one of the funner weapons that I've seen, where it's like an arcing auto-homing laser that'll just zip, zap, and zoop people in the face as they appear in the level. Like, that's the kind of stuff I love. Like, just go crazy with these out-of-this-world sci-fi guns. And the only qualm I had with a lot of them is I just wish that they stacked. Like, I wish that I could have this gun with another gun, and I could just get, like, these crazy combinations that all change how they work when you combine them together. Kind of like with Binding of Isaac abilities. Like, that would be amazing. Now, I know you gotta delineate yourself. We can't all just rip off the Binding of Isaac left and right. That's just not good business sense. But that's a mechanic I've seen used in a number of different games, and I think that's something that a lot more people could use if they really wanted to. So there you go. I was destroyed by a soul siphoner or soul harvester. There's just some stuff in this game where if you'd only have 1 or 2 health, you just get shot in the booty. So I guess in the canon of this game, when your ship explodes, you don't necessarily die per se. Like, I'm guessing you have some type of escape pod that goes back to base at the start of the game, and you get to go talk to the headless cat man, or the legless and armless cat guy. And here you go. Here's all the different things I unlocked with one of my first playthroughs. And he'll give you tips to tell you about, like, how to beat an enemy better. Like, the soul extractor, his trick is you gotta take cover, and if you don't have cover, you just gotta zip zop zoop around as fast as you can and blow his face off. Especially if you have a bomb. And then this guy also gives you other tips, which I thought was kind of neat. Now, what I don't quite get is what's going on with the table, but I think that's something that'll become more apparent as you play deeper and deeper into the game. So far, I've really enjoyed Monolith. I think this is a solid game, a game that I not only like, but I think I'm actually going to replay some more, and I thoroughly recommend for anyone who might be interested in picking up a new roguelike like this. Like, it's solid. I definitely enjoyed this. So what is this game going to be when it finally comes out for the dollary dues? I don't see any mention by the developers how much this is going to cost, but it looks like it's got 7 different types of weapons with over 30 unique modifiers and a ludicrous number of combinations that they can all interact with those passive abilities that you get from the upgrade stations. And yeah, it's also got a really nice soundtrack. Like, that's something that I was thinking about a little bit ago, where there's actually some really nice chip tunes that they've put together. And I'm not a biggest guy for music from older games, because depending on what system you played retro games on, some of the music could sound really terrible or really, really good. But this one actually has some pretty good tunes. So I'm not sure what the price is going to be up front, but if you're interested in this game, you'll see a link down in the video description. There will be a little parentheses that'll tell you the price of the game. Check it out for yourselves. I've been your host, Larry the Chupacabra. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Toodles, everybody, and have a good one.